Hi, Geeksters. Welcome to Geeksterilia's podcast, your favorite podcast about movies, series, and literature with sci fi fantasy themes, and as well as pop culture in general. My name is Cecilia, and I am very happy today because we are going to discuss one of my favorite ever topics. And I have today a very special guest. You may be wondering why are we doing this on a Saturday, on a Saturday afternoon when I typically do this on a Friday nights. And it is because my guest is from Europe, he is from the UK, and well, the let's just say that the schedule wasn't very functional for him. But let's welcome Dan from Voice of Geekdom. Hi Dan, how's it going?
Hi, Cecilia. Thank you for having me, and thank you for making special arrangements for me to be able to stream with you. As you say, your live stream is usually very early in the morning or very late at night, whichever way you want to dice it. So I think it's about 3 in the morning usually for me. So
yeah, that's a pretty rough schedule for you. So yeah, I mean, it was worth having you here. We've been interacting for a while in Steven's channel, so it's pretty. I was looking forward to have you here and discuss Lord of the Rings because well, this is a very special saga for both of us. So
indeed.
it's always very exciting to talk about it. I already have a video about the Lord of the Rings, but it's more focused on what the Lord of the Rings series from Amazon is going to be. At that time, we didn't have much information except for the fact that it was going to be done, or the events were going to happen during the Second Age. So we talk about it a little bit, talk a little bit about it, but in Spanish. I this is and actually that's one of my videos that is going to first be translated. So it's very exciting.
Amazing.
it, it,
Yeah,
it
that's the other accommodation you're making is speaking English for me, which
yeah.
I do appreciate. It would be difficult if I had to
Well,
break
I've
out
been
my high school Spanish for you, but
yeah, I know, but well, I've been doing this for a while. I've been well, I mean I've been having Steven on the channel and many other people. So yeah, it's always worth it. And well, one of the reasons why I open my Patreon is to be able to subtitle every single one of my episodes so that people who don't speak Spanish can understand, and also the people who don't speak English can also understand and join the conversation. So that's one of the goals. So if you want to become a Patreon, the link is on the description, but you can also find it here. So this is one of the main goals for this, and you will find all kinds of extra material in there. And of course, you can also support this channel through the super chat and the super stickers. You're always welcome to, and it's very much appreciated if you support this channel. Okay, but let's start this conversation. This very anticipated conversation, and we are going to start with a question. Why is Tolkien's world, The Lord of the Rings, I mean the whole lore, why is so special to you?
Well, I think first of all, it's a very special work of literature. It's very unique. There's nothing else quite like it in the corpus. It's Tolkien, being the philologist, the professor of linguistics, he invented several languages very early in his life, and this was a passion that started for him very early on. And so that grounding gave him the inspiration to create a world and a history to give these languages. And so this is why we have this wonderfully rich piece of world building, which is just, as I say, it's utterly unique. There's nothing else quite like Middle Earth. And that's why when you read Tolkien's works, you feel like you're moving in, and you can learn the calendar system, you can learn the languages, there's so much depth and detail to Middle Earth that it's just all encompassing when you read Tolkien's works. So number one, there's that. It's a very important piece of literature just for that reason. and it's revolutionary for the fantasy genre and for speculative literature in general. For me personally, I read my father read The Hobbit to me when I was in hospital when I was about 6. I was having grommets in my ears, which is the little tubes that they put in your ears, and so he was reading that to me. And on the hospital ward, all the other kids were just enraptured by this story as well. So he had like a whole little group of kids around him, and so it just it stuck with me. I read The Hobbit almost immediately after he had read it to me, so it was one of the first proper novels with chapters that I'd ever read. I'd read maybe Dr. Seuss and stuff like that beforehand, but it was one of the first sort of real challenging pieces of literature that I'd ever picked up in my life. And then a year or so later, we moved on to The Lord of the Rings, and my dad read The Lord of the Rings to me again. And then, as before, I took it off him and started reading it myself straight afterwards. So I read The Lord of the Rings when I was about 8, which I've said this to people before and people don't believe me, but it's absolutely true.
No, I believe you. I believe you. I'll go deep into that because, well, I started reading at a very, very young age. I mean, I started reading I learned at 4. So when I was 4, so of course I wasn't reading literature at that age, but the first ever novel that I read was Little Women, and it was when I was 7 years old. So of course I didn't understand a lot of the situations that were in the novel, but I that's why I believe you. Mhm.
So when you read Tolkien for the first time, did you read it in Spanish? I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
I don't know why it didn't cross my mind to actually read it in English. So, but at that time, well, I was a very avid reader, and I got them when I was about 16 or something. The movies already had came out. I think the Two Towers movie was already I already saw it, so I read them between Two Towers and The Return of the King. And I first saw the movies, then I read the books. But the reason why they are so special to me is because, well, at that time I was going through something. um I was going through a difficult situation at home, so it was a place where I could really escape to, and and it was a whole other world. And I don't know, those very rich explanations, those very rich detailed descriptions of the world uh, were so vividly portrayed that you truly feel like you're in that world. So it gave me that comfort. So it immediately became like a comfort movie for me. I don't know
yeah.
about you. A comfort movie and a comfort series of books. But yes, that's one of the reasons why it's so special to me.
The themes are important to me as well. The themes of
Yeah.
friendship and fellowship and hope
Hmm.
and so on. Yeah, it's a moving book in many ways as well. People underestimate how much of an emotional journey the books
Hmm.
are.
Yeah, and that is something that bothers me, to be honest, because many people believe that fantasy and sometimes even sci-fi themed movies, series, or whatever are for immature audiences, and they think that they are too cool for fantasy, and I don't I don't think that they have went deep into it to actually understand that this is a place where you can actually talk about very, very important topics and very crucial and emotionally profound topics. I mean,
Mm.
I don't understand why people tend
I
to
think I think that's changing
Mhm.
gradually, bit by bit, as we're going into the 21st century. There's more and more high-profile fantasy stories that are specifically for adults and
Hmm.
in many cases not suitable for children. So I
Yeah.
think that's changing. But yeah, it's something that definitely struck me when I was younger. It was that The Hobbit is a children's book,
Hmm.
has to be said, but the Lord of the Rings, I don't think it was aimed at children, and I
No.
don't think that it was. Children can read it, but I don't think that was the audience that was in mind for it.
Yeah, but even so, The Hobbit is not actually some of the topics that they talk about in in the Hobbit, especially towards the end of the book, are very deep and profound for young children. For example, I wouldn't make my 6-year-old child read The Hobbit yet, and because he needs to understand a little bit more about the world in order
Mm,
to understand the characters and the development and the story itself. And but yes, I mean, any young reader can dive into it and enjoy it, and that's what I love this universe. And yeah, so but of course, the Lord of the Rings uh talks about topics that are a little bit more complex. For example, war and
mm.
friendship and loyalty and betrayal.
And death as well.
Yeah.
Death is a
Hmm.
really big theme in the Lord of the Rings, and that's something that most children haven't experienced yet, or at least haven't understood. Um,
Yeah, or greed and the desire of power, and well, many things. So yeah, it's a good. I think the adolescence is a good place to start, the teenage years, and with the Lord of the Rings, and of course with the Silmarillion, that
yeah.
it's a whole other universe. But yes, and before we dive into the movies, I would like to discuss about a little bit about the Rings of Power series. We recently had a big revelation with promotional posters with some of the characters, some of the main characters. I'm going to show an image of all of them. We're not going to talk about every single one of these, except for some some of these we find a little bit more interesting, because in terms of how important the character is in the story. Let's remember that this story is developed during the Second Age. So one of the things that we're going to see is the kingdoms of men, the realms of men, and some of the realms of the elves, and the conflict that Sauron starts between them, among them as well,
Mm.
and between them and among them. And so some of these characters, of course, have more importance, and these some of these posters reveal it. For example, one of the most interesting ones that we found was this, as it's clearly an elven, I mean, dwarf king, some
Hmm.
of sort. The scripture here is dwarvish, and
Yeah,
the hands have some gold, um I don't know the word, I mean, dust or something.
yeah, it's gold. It
It's
looks like
gold.
gold
It
paint,
looks.
almost, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, the we see the writing there on the warhammer that he's got.
Hmm.
It's in dwarven runes, which were
Yeah.
actually invented by the elves in terms of the lore of the books, but they're based on um, kind of Norse runes, real world runes, the Futhark.
Hmm.
I think it's pronounced like that. And so in universe they're called the Kirth.
Hmm.
And so a friend of mine actually, who I had on my channel at one point a few months back, translated them, and they're actually in English, but just transcribed into this runic system, which is interesting. But
Uh-huh.
yeah, this certainly screams dwarf twos, doesn't it? Straight away,
Yeah.
the red beard, the grubby
Hmm.
hands with the gold on, and the warhammer with the dwarven runes.
Yeah.
So most likely, this is going to be the dwarven king during the period
Hmm.
where the rings were forged, who was Durin the Third.
Yeah. And speaking of dwarfs, this image
Mm.
also is being related to dwarfs. Some rumor that this is a dwarf queen. And she also shares the same stains of gold in the fingers. And when everything is made of gold, all the jewelry that she's wearing is made of gold. Of course, this is one of the posters that we are not 100% sure about them, about it. But for the characteristics of the things that we're seeing, and especially the stains on the hands, many people rumor that this is a dwarf queen. And well, there was some controversy, of course, because when they revealed who the actress may be, it was, since it was a woman of color, well, there was of course some controversy. You know that the universe of Tolkien is very wide, but there are reasons why it is so, why it was written that way and why it was portrayed in the movies that way. But of course, well, times are changing, and it's a nice opportunity to see people of color in the Tolkien's world. And well, there's always controversy about that, but I think that we should actually open our minds about it, and because in the end it's a fantasy world, and anything can happen, right? And
Yeah. Many of the stories were based on European legends. This is true,
yes.
but Middle Earth isn't Europe. Middle Earth is Earth in
Hmm.
its primordial mythic state. It's Earth, so it should include other cultures. It should do,
Hmm.
and it does. You know, there are other cultures mentioned in the books, and many of the backstory of the different tribes of men, who are even the men that we see in the West.
Hmm.
Some of them are said to be ethnically diverse, which I've pointed out recently on my channel. So there is actually precedence for this in the books and so on.
Hmm.
And as for the dwarves, we don't know who these dwarves are. If they're Durin's folk, then you might expect them to be Caucasian looking. But there are 7 different clans of dwarves in
Hmm.
Tolkien's works, and for 4 of them, we know almost nothing about them. So this series could well be explaining areas of the map that we haven't seen before. It's definitely going to be filling in gaps in the whole mythology, because not much was written about the Second Age. There was a
Hmm.
lot of room for invention within the Second Age, because this is we have the broad outline of what happens plot-wise. We have the main points, but Tolkien didn't write a lot of stories set in
Yeah.
this time period within his world. So there's a lot of scope to do a lot with this show, and it makes perfect sense to me that they would have people of color in a show that's being made in the 21st century anyway. So frankly, it's a silly controversy.
Yeah, totally agree. And well, this poster
Mm-hmm.
also is one of the most interesting ones because of this dagger that we see. It's a clear reference to the trees to the legendary trees that we see in the Silmarillion. These trees were made of light. I don't exactly remember the names of them.
Laurelin and Telperion.
Laurelin and Telperion. Yes, thank you. This is, yeah. Let me explain something. I'm not good with details. I'm not good with names, but I am good at like talking about the whole thing in general. I'm not great with details, but yes, thank you. And because of this, is rumored to be Galadriel here. I have um I find it strange that she's wearing an armor, because I don't recall in the Silmarillion that she's ever going to fight in any war, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't.
Well, there is a basis in the lore for her being very physically able.
Mhm.
She was said to be quite tall, like at least 6'4", which is very tall for a woman, although
Mhm.
not so much for an elf woman. But she was said to be physically tall and strong and competed with men athletically when she was in Valinor. In terms of some of the backstory that we get in some of the other volumes, not in the Silmarillion, but in some other places, in some other texts,
Mhm.
that have been published. So it's not out of bounds to put her in a suit of armor, I don't think, at all,
Mhm.
actually. Uh, with that said, there's no kind of there's no stories about her doing any fighting really.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's definitely room for it.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see that
Mhm.
actually.
The
But
rumor is about that one actually that that has been. It is a rumor; it's not confirmed, but
mhm,
that might be a scene that we see of her crossing the Hel Karaxe, which is
okay.
after the two trees have been destroyed.
Hmm.
The elves, some of them rebel and they go back to Middle Earth, back to the mainland, as it were, and they rebel against the gods, which are the Valar.
Hmm.
And so some of them sail, and then the ones that don't sail end up having to cross this kind of bridge of ice that bridges Aman, which is the land of the gods, with Middle Earth, and
Hmm.
it's this hostile, horrid place where lots of people end up dying en route. And Galadriel is one of those elves who crosses along that route in the Silmarillion. So the rumor is that that's why she's wearing that suit of armor,
Okay,
but
that's
we don't know.
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. About this poster, some say that it's Isildur because of the ring, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe because of the detail of the. I don't know if this is a sword or something, or some kind of. I don't know, but maybe this figure that we see on top of it, it reminds me about a castle.
Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of a castle. I don't know if this is Gondor's castle, but it could be. I don't know. Let's just remember that these posters are made to be very cryptical, so
Mm-hmm.
that there's a whole lot of speculation because they know how Lord of the Rings fans are,
Mm-hmm. They
and
do.
yeah.
I have some theories about this. Do you
Uh-huh.
want me to go into a bit more depth?
Hmm.
So one possibility is that this object in this character's hand here is the scepter of Numenor.
Hmm.
And so Numenor is one of the settings that we will see in this show, and it was the ancestors of the Gondorians, basically,
Okay. Hmm.
who live on an island, a sort of paradise kind of island in the middle of the sea.
Hmm.
And the ruler of that island held a scepter. So I think possibly that is this scepter.
Okay.
Um, and the reason I think that is because of some of the details on there. So we've got some wings on there, which makes me think about Gondolin,
Hmm.
which that could have been handed down by the original founder of Numenor, potentially.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's intriguing. I may be wrong. It may be something else completely different. But,
Yeah, that's what is interesting about these posters.
mm, yeah,
And as speaking of cryptic posters,
yeah.
here is this one. It's one of the most intriguing ones.
This is one of the most cryptic, and I have no idea. I have no idea about this one.
Yeah, I mean, there is some tale about some sword made of materials that came from outer world or something, maybe like a meteorite or I don't know, any kind of stone that may have fell from the sky. And it is rumored that this is the sword that we are seeing.
Hmm.
In the story, this sword gets broken for some reason. I don't remember it, but
Well,
many say this is it.
yeah, there was two. There was actually two swords. There was an elf character in the Silmarillion who was a
Hmm.
particularly nasty guy who kind of captures this elf princess and
Hmm.
sort of not exactly forces her to marry him, but kind of gaslights her and manipulates her into marrying him. And so he's a real creep. And
Hmm.
so he was
Oh
a
yeah, I
he
remember
was a
him.
weaponsmith who
Hmm.
forged armor and swords out of a black substance that came from the sky, came from
Hmm.
a meteor.
Yeah.
And so that, yeah, there was two swords, and one of them was used to kill a dragon at one point in the Silmarillion.
Hmm. Yeah.
So maybe this is that one.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember now that about that guy. Yeah, now that you mention it. And of
mhm.
course, this one, there's not much to say about this one, but this screams Rohirrim to me. Of
Yeah.
course, at that age, the Rohirrim weren't a thing yet,
No,
but this could be like an ancestor of the Rohirrim. So I don't know, it makes me very excited about it.
agreed.
uh, And there's also this poster. This is one of my favorites. I don't know about you, but some say this is Elendil because of the elements of the sun
Mm.
and the light and the star, but I don't know about what your opinion is. But for, I mean, the details of the scales in the clothing, um, they relate this to the Nominor, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
It makes me think of not Elendil, but his other son. So
Hmm.
his son that everybody knows is Isildur, who everyone will remember from the movies. Um, that you should remember from the movies. But he had another son called Anarion, who wasn't in the Lord of the Rings movies, and
Hmm.
he was kind of associated with the sun. Um, he kind of ruled over Minas Tirith in the Second Age, the end of the
Hmm.
Second Age, and Minas Tirith at that time was Minas Anor. It was renamed when Minas Ithil
Hmm.
was captured by the enemy and turned into Minas Morgul. So Minas Anor, um, or Minas Ithil, are the Tower of the Sun and the Tower of the Moon.
Okay. Hmm.
And Anarion's name means kind of, well, the Anar part obviously means the sun. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of sun stuff associated with him. So I wonder whether this is something to do with him. Um, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just a thought. It's not really there's not really that much evidence for that.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of theories about this one.
Yeah.
But of course, the most interesting, at least for me, it's this one. Many believe that this was Sauron, but some other people say, well, some other people said that it was one of the, um, on one of the, uh, the Nazgul
Hmm.
king, and some say that, uh, which I don't remember the name of this one. But yeah, I mean, it's maybe one of these dark kings that one is one of the first ones to fall into Sauron's control or something. What can you say about this?
Well, it definitely you would think this is an evil character. This is a
Mm-hmm.
bad guy. This is a villain. Um, it doesn't I liked how kind of manicured and nice the gauntlet looks, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because Sauron was a craftsman. He was somebody who made things, and
Mm-hmm.
so I like that it's quite not nice looking, you know, it's scary and gothic looking, but I like how well made it looks, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. The sword as well, you
Yeah.
know, it's a very pretty sword, evil looking sword, but a very kind of elegant looking evil sword. So it could be Sauron, and
Mm-hmm.
it could also be one of the Nazgul, because
Mm-hmm.
chances are we'll get backstories for them as well. With this being
Yeah.
about the Rings of Power, we'll probably see them get given Rings of Power and turn into Nazgul. So
Yes, because well, most of the plot is going to be about well, Sauron make crafting the rings
mhm.
and seducing the king, the men king, and the, well, the dwarf kings didn't really fall into that, but
Well,
but
the Dwarf Kings had 7 rings as well, so there was the
yes,
seven for the dwarves. So we will see that too.
yeah. So that's what we're going to see. We're going to see uh the conflict that he starts with the elves, because, well, he basically starts saying, well, why do the elves have eternal life and you men haven't? And, well, this character needs to be very charismatic in that terms, so that we you can believe why they fell so easily into his power. So,
Mm.
well, this is very much what we saw, and I didn't want to overlook it, um, when uh, when we're going to, even though we were going to talk about the movies. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's always interesting to speculate about this, and I am really looking forward to September, so we
You and
can
me
start
both.
seeing. Yeah.
We may well get a trailer in probably about a week, actually, as well, at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So we might know more in a few more days.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Okay. Okay, now we can start to talk about the movies. themselves. I mean, we're going to talk about the movies in general. We may focus a little bit into each of them, but okay. Well, these movies came out 20 years ago. The first movie came out 20 years ago. I was a teenager and at that time. And well, I remember that when I first saw them, I was so impressed, and I didn't know anything about this world. So it made me wonder about it, and I definitely started reading the books after the second movie when I was fully convinced that this universe was worth to know a little bit more about it. And I loved it. I loved it very much.
Hmm.
I loved every single character, especially the Fellowship of the Ring. Each one of them is special in their own way. And I don't know who is your favorite character of the Fellowship.
Um, I have a little bit of a soft spot for Pippin, I suppose. I like Gandalf a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Gandalf's really interesting. I do like Aragorn, although I also like book Aragorn, and the two characters are very different. So that was
Mm-hmm.
an interesting eye opener for me when I saw Viggo Mortensen's portrayal of him. Gimli, of course, gets a lot of good lines, but I would say my favourite character is Samwise Gamgee. I think he's the star
Yeah.
of the whole show and wonderfully portrayed, and just just is such a lovable friend. Just a perfect friend to have with you on an adventure that turns into quite a grueling um, escape into exile and a horrible kind of suicide mission to a volcano. Um, and yeah, the emotional beats involving that character are just so strong that you can't really look past him. There are other characters that I enjoy a lot that aren't part of the Fellowship as well. We'll get into some
Mm-hmm.
of those as we go through, I'm sure. But
Yeah. Yeah, we'll mention them in a bit, but regarding the Fellowship, now that we're focusing on the first movie,
hmm,
um, well, I share the opinion of Sam.
hmm,
Of course, there Frodo is special because he's the one that is like the chosen one to the task, to do this task, this impossible task, and of course, you see him struggle with the ring and the power of the ring that is affecting him, and that is the reason why he behaves the way he behaves. Of course, it makes him not as likable as all of the other characters, but well, it's his mission and his struggle is needed to be seen with a lot of empathy.
hmm,
And well, I understand why not many people like Frodo or like Frodo the most, but um including myself, but I understand the whole thing. I mean, but I do understand why he is why he is. And but yeah, I think Sam and Boromir are my favorite
hmm,
characters because, well, for different reasons, right? Regarding Sam, all of the reasons that you already mentioned, and the fact that his bravery is something remarkable because he is the kind of friend that is willing to confront you and tell you the things that you don't really want to hear, even though they know that you may not react in a good way. And he's even willing to I don't know, to I don't really want to say force,
hmm.
but like push you into the situation that you actually need to do.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
he's the friend that you need in your darkest moments in that way, and he will make you confront your own failings, I suppose.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
and that is always very appreciated when you have a friendship. And one thing that I would love to mention about Sam is that, and the whole thing about male friendship that is portrayed here, I don't
Mm,
know how it was in the times when Tolkien wrote about this. But I think that Frodo and Sam are very much an example of male friendship that is not polluted with um, toxic masculinity, and that's why many people think that they are like attracted to each other.
Hmm.
I don't think this is the case. Of course, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't think this is the case. I don't. I actually think that this is a true male friendship that is not polluted with uh, toxic masculinity traits. And I
Yeah,
think that
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
yes, and I think that is beautiful to see. I mean, you don't see that very often. You don't see that very often, and that's why I love Sam and Frodo as the power friendship couple that they are. I don't know what you guys think, but yeah, this is my perception. I can see that you share this opinion with me.
Yeah. I'm so me being a Tolkien YouTuber myself. I'm on Twitter, and when I am on Twitter, I'm on Tolkien Twitter. I'm seeing all the Tolkien tweets, and so it comes and goes. But this conversation, this dialogue about Sam and Frodo and the nature of their friendship, and it's always there in the fandom. It's just
Hmm.
it's constant because it's there's um there's kind of there's the LGBT community that does like to claim this relationship between these two characters, and I completely see it because you can see not only in the films but in the books there's certain bits of kind of symbolism that kind of hint towards it a little bit, but I think it's probably unconscious on the author's part myself.
Hmm.
Um, so I can definitely see that interpretation, but it's not my interpretation. I
Yes.
do see them as best friends and brothers and family, and as you say, it's a very much a non-toxic masculinity sort of relationship that they have. But the positive portrayals of masculinity are all over the place, actually, in the Lord of the Rings, and that's something that we should celebrate.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, many people of course complain that there's a great lack of female characters there.
Yeah,
And of course it is true, but we need to take into account that these books were written in the 1930s, and they are majorly based on Tolkien's experience with war.
yeah.
And of
There are a lot
course,
more women in the Silmarillion, though, I should say.
uh-huh, yeah.
On the other hand, there are almost none whatsoever in The Hobbit.
None.
So yeah,
Not one single man.
there's
Uh-huh.
one or two that are meant. I mean, Bilbo's mother is mentioned,
Hmm.
but there's no actual scenes with any women in The Hobbit.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, every woman that we see in the Hobbit movies, it's made up. I mean,
mm,
of course, Galadriel is not made up, and not a made up character, but she's not in the Hobbit movies as and I'm in the Hobbit book
no.
anywhere in anywhere. But yeah, I mean, you need to consider all of these little factors that at that time, with the values of that time, he made wonders with that. And they were so he portrayed these universal emotions that are up are up to date even today, even though you don't find many women characters or whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's very wonderful.
Don't you think as well though the women that Tolkien did write were flipping awesome, like all of them.
Yes, yes, and that's
Yeah.
something that I actually also hate when I hear criticism about it, because
Hmm.
these women were awesome. I mean, you have Galadriel, who is a super powerful woman, elf woman, that was respected and feared and loved,
Hmm.
and she's even more remarkable in the books and in the movies than Celeborn, who was his husband, who was supposed to be the Lord, right?
Yeah.
uh, no one, no one really cares about Celeborn. I mean,
No, I did a podcast about Galadriel, just Galadriel as a character in the books, with
Mhm.
my good friend Helen, the clueless fangirl, who I don't know if you know her, don't know if you've been on panels with her before,
Yeah, I think so.
um, but she calls Celeborn arm candy. That's her term for him, which made me laugh
Well,
at the time quite a bit.
yeah. Well, to be fair, in the Fellowship of the Ring extended version, we see him actually speak,
Yeah.
and we see him interact with Aragorn, and he's the one to tell you you need to go this path because this and that, and well, yeah. But in the commercial version of the movie, you don't even see him talk at all.
Mm.
So yeah, he's Galadriel is so special that she outshines him in this male-dominated world. So that's pretty awesome to see. And of course, I don't mean to diminish Celeborn, but it's rare to see a powerful woman in a medieval setting, even if it's a fantasy setting. And
And that's
well,
why I don't think having her in armor in the show potentially, if that picture is her,
uh-huh.
I don't think it's out of bounds at all. I think it makes sense.
Yes, especially because um, well, elves in general, well, they are people that have lived for so long that it makes
Mm.
sense that they know a lot about anything. Of
And they're kind of more androgynous in general than humans are
Yes,
in general. I'm not sure if that's the right word for it really,
yeah,
but there's less of a gap between the sexes physically than there is in humans
hmm,
in elven kind. So why not have her in
yeah.
armor?
And I mean, elven women has have been known for actually stepping into action many
Mhm.
times. I mean, the whole tale about Beren and Luthien. Luthien rescues Beren at
Yeah,
some point.
he would have died very early in the story if it wasn't for her.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like several times all the way through the story, she keeps saving his bacon. It's quite funny actually. I mean, he does do things as well. He is quite brave, and he does, he
Yes, but he ends up being the damsel in distress in many times.
yeah, in many instances in that storyline, yeah,
Uh-huh.
absolutely.
So yeah, I don't think it's a wild idea to see Galadriel swing a sword at some point. But
But
yes,
let's get back to the movies anyway. Sorry.
let's get back to the movies. And well, of course, we have Arwen, who
Mm.
many people point her out as the damsel in distress in the story, as the character that doesn't do anything, but she actually does do a lot of things for Aragorn. She's the whole inspiration for Aragorn. She's the one that, well, they, there are many ways to be strong as a woman, and
Mm.
one thing that bothers me is that sometimes people expect strong women in a strong female character to be a warrior or something, to have male characteristics, when, well, male associated characteristics. But Arwen is strong in her own sense. She's strong in her own way. I mean, the decision that she made is not something to be taken lightly. She she decided to do this for the love of her life, and to do this big sacrifice for the love of her life. And that, I understand why that may seem criticizable, but I mean, every single person that loves another person has had to do something like this
Mm.
in at some point, and it's
Yeah,
not something bad.
she shows a lot of strength in that one scene where we're getting ahead to the next movie, but I think that's okay.
Mhm.
Where she stands up to her father, to Elrond,
Yes.
and she basically says, well, she kind of guilt trips him into sending elves to help the men in the south,
Yeah.
and the elves sort of show up at Helm's Deep, and that's because of her.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a nice moment, which is not in the books, but it worked in the movie well enough. So.
Yes, and she was in the movies. She was even at the. I don't recall if it was in the Helm's Deep battle or in the Gondor battle. That, well, it's not shown in the movies in the final cut, in the either in the neither in the extended version or the commercial version. But there were scenes where she was wielding a sword
Yes.
alongside Aragorn, that ended up being cut off because of book purists. But I
Would have been interesting to see, wouldn't it, if we'd have gotten
it would
more of
have
that.
been interesting to see that. But at the same time, I don't. Well, I would have loved to see that, but at the same time, I wouldn't love had loved to see that because of this the reason the what I just said to you, that there are many women, different ways to be a strong woman, and not everyone has to be a warrior to be strong. And that's something that I appreciate that they did, why they didn't show her. But at the same time, I would have loved to see her fighting,
Mm.
and it was also. But we have that scene that is not in the books where she rescues Frodo in the first movie,
Yeah.
and I love that scene because first of all, it introduces you the relationship between Aragorn and Arwen, but you actually also have you, I was actually going to say a Spanish word, but I don't know. You
Try me.
actually
Go for
oh
it.
I was I was going to say actually también, or like actually too, but I don't know, my wiring got mixed. Um, you see the power. You see a first glimpse of the power of the elves here with her
Mm.
when she makes the river um take away the Nazgul,
Yeah.
and I like that. I like that very much.
Also,
And
before that as well, when she first appears, when she walks in and Frodo kind of sees what she looks like, kind of behind the veil of the world. She sort of comes in and she's all glowy and she's wearing different clothing, which is a bit odd, but um, she has a sort of quick costume change. Because Frodo sees her through different eyes because he's all
yeah, he's
zonked
in a
because he's been
like an
stabbed
in the
by the
middle of the this plane.
yeah.
um yeah, that scene is also very very beautiful in terms of you know visually. And oh, here's Erin. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Aaron.
How's it going? Welcome to our discussion about the
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings. And well, of course, there's people that complain that obviously in the books that's not the case. It's on some other elf that rescues Frodo. But I did appreciate that Arwen was the one that did it in the movies. Big for all of the reasons that I already mentioned. She shows
Mhm.
this strength that she has. She knows that she's a better writer than Aragorn. She knows that she can help help Frodo better than Aragorn can. So I like this about this scene, and I also like regarding the first movie the contrast between the world of the hobbits to the world of the all of the other realms, because well you see that in the Shire nothing ever happens, nothing ever truly bad happens. And that's why I mentioned in some other I think another interaction that we had in another streaming, when I said that the hobbits are privileged people.
Hmm. That you and
And
I had in the past.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the hobbits are privileged people really, because they haven't really gone through war or anything really truly devastating. So they live in this, I don't know, I wouldn't say fantasy world because it is already a fantasy world, but they live in this naivety that
Mm.
they don't really understand what's going on elsewhere and why everyone else takes everything so seriously. And this explains a lot about the behavior that Pippin has. I mean, I understand that many may find Pippin annoying because he's the cause of many of the perils that the Fellowship have in the first movie.
Well, Gandalf certainly finds him annoying.
Yes, and full of a took. And but this is, if you understand the context, if you understand why the hobbits live the way they live, you understand this behavior, and you and you don't judge him very harshly.
Hmm. All
You
right,
mentioned.
in the books, the two hobbits, the Pippin and Merry, are kind of
Mhm,
the heirs to the two biggest houses in the Shire. So they're kind of like hobbit nobility. So
mhm,
even within the cloistered Shire, which is kind of, as I say, cloistered is, separated from the world around it, and they're very naive about the wider world.
mhm.
Even within that world, Merry and Pippin are sort of the cream of the crop of society and are very privileged and so on. So their sort of foppish attitude and their kind of like naivety and childlike behavior, it's very excusable. Um,
Yeah.
Compared with the books, Mary is very much sillier and more comedic than he is in the books, but in the movies. But
Mhm.
but that's just part of adaptation is introducing elements of humor, I suppose, to these characters. So that's just a difference there. But yeah, the chemistry between those two actors, Merry and Pippin,
Oh
their
yeah.
acting is
Well,
fantastic, isn't it?
the four hobbits share this strong chemistry, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we see Frodo and Sam having a more serious attitude because of the task that they were given, and the fact that, well, the burden that Frodo has immediately puts him in a situation that where he can no longer be as silly as the other ones. And for example, Sam is always worried. He's always serving Frodo. I mean, he's his friend, but he's also his servant because he's his gardener. And he's, like you said before, and that Merry and Pippin were like hobbit nobility. Sam was a hobbit working class man, and so
Yeah.
it's only logical that he has a different understanding about the world than Merry and Pippin. But in the movies, at least, I can see that Merry growing more mature than earlier than Pippin, because
Yeah.
he saw those. I don't know. He's the one that makes the ends go to. Well, no, it was a combination of both Merry and Pippin, but Mary took a little more of a. I don't know what would be the word for this. Like aggressive speech towards the ends,
Yeah.
and Pippin was a little more smart
Yeah. He
because
tricks them,
he tricks them into see the disaster that finally makes them and act against
which
Isengard.
I will
Uh-huh.
say I don't necessarily like that scene though. When they do come out of the forest and see all the stumps and the burnt trees and everything else, and Treebeard sort of kind of lets out that howl and sort of roars like that,
Uh-huh.
and then instantly appear from behind the trees, like right there. They're just like they're a few yards away. Literally, they're just right next door. How did they not notice before that? It doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. I can't suspend my disbelief there.
Yeah.
I said this on a podcast with John, who you know as well, and he said, "Well, I just say, well, it's just magic." But I can't suspend my disbelief in that scene personally. But
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yes. Well, maybe the one and only explanation is that they are like sort of asleep or very,
mm,
they don't really actually want to see what's going on because they don't
yes,
want to move.
they've become rather tree-ish, as Treebeard
Yes.
would say in the book. Yeah.
But even so, it's a little weird. Yeah, now that you mention it.
Mm,
But yeah, back to the hobbits. I think that I like the contrast between them and the other on all of the other characters, especially during the council, where we first see Boromir and we first see Legolas, and everyone is, you can tell that there have been a lot of history, and there has been a lot of history and a lot of conflict between all of the races that we're seeing here. We see um uh we see Gimli making some sort of aggressive remarks about the elves, and likewise, and I don't remember exactly, but maybe there was a mention about the men being weak and more susceptible to the power of the ring.
Mm,
And you understand that there's a lot of conflict there. You know that there has been something there that doesn't really make them unite so easily, and they don't really uh, uh, I don't know, this it's quite strong. And for example, one of the things that I can see that a casual viewer may not understand is why the elves stepped out of the action about in here.
mm,
And maybe, well, not exactly sure about the answer, but my guess is that, well, the elves were a lot of time before in the middle, or than men. They were there many many years before men, and they already had a lot of wars and a lot of bloodshed among them, and they just want to go to Valinor. They they don't want to see anything more. Huh.
yeah, their time is coming to an end. Basically,
Mm-hmm,
they know that the third age is coming to an end one way or another,
mm-hmm,
no matter whether Sauron wins or whether he's defeated. So it's kind of predestined that it is their time to be starting to leave.
mm-hmm,
Many of them have left already, and many more of them are continuing to leave. In the Fellowship of the Ring, we see that scene early on where the elves are traveling through the forest, and uh, Frodo says, "Wood elves," and then that never, as a book reader, it never makes sense because they're not wood elves; they're clearly high elves. That's why they're shining.
mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, they doesn't really matter. But but
Uh-huh.
they show that early on because they want you to understand that about the elves that their time is coming to an end.
Yeah.
And Elrond says it again later on, just in case you didn't get that from the scene at the beginning.
Mm-hmm,
Um, and that scene also sets up Sam's curiosity about the elves as well, because he very much wants to go and see the elves. That was his first goal, was to just see the elves. That's why he wanted to go on an adventure and leave the Shire. Um, sorry, I'm
uh,
rambling.
no, no, I mean, Aaron agrees, very much agrees with you. I mean, would Frodo even know the difference? Of course I mean, he
Between
has.
different types of elves, yeah, Frodo certainly would, yeah. Um,
Yeah, but maybe because he has read something about Bilbo's great writings. I don't know,
hmm,
but you don't really get that in the movie because you don't really see this. But yeah, I can see Frodo making this mistake because
yeah,
I mean
maybe.
he hasn't never left the Shire before,
Hmm,
and neither of them. So it's understandable that they don't really know the difference, and they don't really know understand what's going on. And
hmm,
well, of course, this is like the elves are leaving because they know that their time in on Middle Earth is over. They have had enough. They basically have had enough of it,
yeah,
and they just gonna
they
want to
need a
rest.
holiday, yeah.
Yeah, they just gonna retire and spend their time in Florida or something, and enjoying their time in a nice little island with paradise environment or something. And well, they are leaving in order to give the space to men for men to grow and in their own realms. Of
Hmm.
course, during the second age we see a little bit of this, but there was this competition, right, for the resources and the lands and basically power. And
To an extent, elves aren't driven by the same desires as men, so they don't
Mhm,
really necessarily want power in the same way that men do.
mhm,
Resources, yes, maybe you can argue, yes, because men were consuming huge amounts of resources during the Second Age, because men really expanded a lot during that time.
mhm,
The Numenorians, who I talked about at the beginning when we were talking about the TV show, cut down lots and lots and lots of trees during the Second Age, and so
mhm,
that was probably a difficult bone of contention for the elves, who obviously love the trees.
mhm. They even construct around the trees rather than
Mhm.
cut them. Um, but yeah, so the council pretty much reflects this conflict, right?
Hmm.
And we see it during the movies where you see that Gondor didn't respond to Rohan's cry for help, and Gondor is suffering because their lack of a king and the rule of a poor
Mm.
man.
Not job, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, you see all of the struggles of the older people, and I like the way that Merry, Pippin, Frodo, and Sam react to it when
Mm.
they see this suffering in this world that they don't really actually know, and and they start their journey, and they just think that they are going into an adventure with everyone else is convinced that this task is almost impossible, and are going to are basically going to die
Hmm.
because of it trying to do it. And I like I said, I like this contrast a lot, and we see it transform into the later movies, and until we see Mary wielding a sword
Mm.
with courage, Mary saving Faramir from his father. Maybe not directly, but he was the one that told Gandalf to save him.
Sure,
And
sure.
mhm,
And the final scene, the final battle scene, I should say, where they before the Black Gate, the
mhm.
Battle of the Morannon, where Merry and Pippin are the first two to charge,
Yeah.
and they go charging out, and then the men charge after them and overtake them very quickly because the hobbits have got very tiny legs.
See, yeah.
Uh, uh,
Yeah. Well, what are your favorite scenes in the movies? And
oh man. I think my very favourite scene is the ride of the Rohirrim in the Battle
oh
of
yes.
Pelennor. I can't watch that without getting just goosebumps upon goosebumps. Like my goosebumps have got big goosebumps, and my whole body's just tingling when I watch
Hmm.
that scene. I can't. It just it almost makes me cry every time. And it's just a cavalry charge. Is all it is. But it's just the music. I think.
No, and the emotional charge as well. I mean,
Mm.
you have this background that Gondor didn't respond to that call to that cry of help, and they are
Mhm.
helping either way. Of
True.
course, there was, of course, Theoden didn't actually want to go, but after Aragorn sort of saves the day in the Battle of Helm's Deep, he
Mm.
actually changes his mind and he says, "Well, why not help this guy to save his realm?"
Yeah.
So the emotional charge behind the charge of the Rohirrim is very very emotional. I mean, it's very strong. That's why it gives you the chills, and you know what this means for Eowyn and Pippin as well. And that's why I believe that that's why it's so exciting. You know that King Theoden may die in this battle because of the things that he says, and if you are a long time watcher of any type of medieval sort of
Yeah.
movie, you know when you hear a speech like that, you know that that man is going to die.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
rather telegraphed, isn't it? That's true.
yeah, and that along the music, the Rohirrim theme, it's just, I don't know, it gives me the chills every single time I watch that scene. And another scene that no matter how many times I watch it, it breaks my heart is Boromir's death.
Mm.
I mean, like I said before, Boromir is one of my favorite characters because he's one of the most complex characters in the whole story. Everyone else is a little bit more um, flat in terms of values, not necessarily completely flat, but or one-sided, but because we all see them struggle at one certain point when they are in front of the ring, right? But with Boromir, we see this struggle, and you know that he doesn't really mean wrong. He actually just wants this tool or this gift to save his people.
Mm.
But
That's what the ring does as well, and
Uh-huh.
that's you were talking earlier about Frodo. You having to exercise a certain amount of empathy with Frodo, and you have to understand his journey and his struggle. And I think Boromir kind of illustrates what the ring does quite nicely, because we
Hmm.
see Boromir's bravery, especially when he redeems himself. But even before that, he shows himself to be brave and courageous and to have good values, and that's why he's complex and why we love him. But
Yeah.
when the ring tempts Boromir, it does it by appealing to his um, his love of his people and his need to help them.
Hmm.
And so when the ring acts on people, that's what it does. It forces you to justify your own desire for it by
Hmm.
kind of rationalizing things,
Yeah.
which is what's really interesting about Boromir's storyline.
Yeah.
I will say Sean Bean as well is, I think, one of the strongest actors in this whole trilogy, which is
Yes.
quite a feat, really, when you think of this ensemble cast and how great some of these actors are. Um, my favourite actor in this trilogy is between him and Sir Ian McKellen, I would say.
Yeah.
Um,
I probably lean towards Sean Bean because he showed a wider range of emotions in the movie. And Gandalf's character didn't necessarily portray, but show that because of the nature of Gandalf's character.
mm,
Um, but yes, that scene where he gets shot uh, with the arrows, and he keeps fighting to save Merry and Pippin. It's like him trying to erase the damage he caused.
mm,
But I don't know. We see his good nature in so many ways before that. For example, when they go out from the mines, and Aragorn immediately wants to keep going, and he's like, "Please give them a second. They just lost someone.
yeah,
Give them a second, for God's sake, and for goodness sake," he says. And Aragorn is like, "We really need to get moving. There will be time for that." And then he doesn't really give them the chance to process Gandalf's death
mm.
in that moment, but he was actually
Aragorn's
trying.
not wrong, though, is he? Let's be honest.
Aragorn wasn't wrong. Yes, I know, and he had great reasons for that. But this speaks about the nature of Boromir.
Yeah.
He is a man who understands human emotion, even though
And
these
he's
were
only
hobbits.
known Gandalf for 5 minutes as well, and
Uh-huh.
most of their dialogue is fairly hostile, actually. Like
Uh-huh.
between the two of them, they don't seem to agree very much in the council, and I don't think they have too much dialogue together in Moria. They have some on the mountain
Hmm.
when they're going up Caradhras,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, he takes the Gandalf very quickly and certainly understands the hobbits. I really, really like the character building scenes that Boromir has with the hobbits.
Oh
The
yeah,
one
when he's
scene
teaching them to fight and
teaching them to sword fight. Yeah, I really enjoy that
Uh-huh.
scene. That's not in the books at all, but I really like that they added that. It's really good.
Yeah, because well, in the books, you actually you actually can perceive that sense of camaraderie among them because you have a lot more time to develop that. But in movies, you don't really have that time, so you have
Mm-hmm.
to portray it in other ways, and that was a nice way to portray camaraderie between all of the all of the people that we're seeing here, no matter where their background, right? And that was a nice thing to do. For here in the comments are mentioning this moment, Aragorn and the whole realm bowing to the hobbits can make it through that scene without crying.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very emotional, that one as well, because w- no one actually before that, no one actually cared about the hobbits at all.
Yeah.
And throughout many moments in the movies, you see men or dwarves or elves diminish the capacities of the hobbits in when it's a conflict, like when it's combat or when it's war. I mean, war and combat is the same thing, kind of the same thing, but maybe I don't know, it's don't necessarily have to be a war to have combat. But
No,
you know what I mean. You know what I mean,
yeah,
right?
I do.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And they
the hobbits prove themselves, and they have qualities. The hobbits have qualities that the other races don't, and that kind of I think they're almost perfectly suited to be the ones who do save the world in this
mhm,
sense, because I think the ring would have conquered anyone else that tried to bring it to the mountain.
mhm.
Frodo can't hold it back in the end. In the end, he succumbs to the ring. But if anybody else had tried to take it that far, they wouldn't have gotten even that far.
And this is and this is why I find important that the naivety and the privileged nature of the hobbits, because when you when you're a child and have been growing up in a peaceful environment, you are very much like the hobbits, that you don't really know about the world, and you don't really have an idea about the suffering of everyone else. But that gives you a quality, that you are new to this pain, and you are new to everything that can make you have negative, quote unquote, emotions, that the ring can take advantage from.
Mm,
That's why I believe that hobbits have a more resistance to its evil, because they haven't been in contact with the suffering of the world. And I think that it's both an advantage and a disadvantage for them to dive into this world, because of course the cultural differences, but also the fact that their nature and the way that they were raised, the way that they everything that they know is so foreign to the evil of this world, that it
yeah.
actually gives them an advantage. And that I find it very, very interesting. And oh, I want to say hi to John. Hi, John. Don't be jealous. Don't be jealous. There's always more. There will always be more episodes in this podcast, and you will always be welcome here. So don't be jealous about this conversation.
John is a man of many talents and great knowledge as well, so I'm sure you'll
Yes.
find another topic for him in the future.
Hmm. Hmm. And oh, another one of my favorite moments is, of course, when Eowyn kills an Nazgul. It's just I love her, and I love her deeply, deeply, deeply. She's one of my favorite characters of all the movies,
Yeah.
because
Do you want to know something about that scene when she kills the Nazgul? Actually, I don't think I've ever said this before on a stream ever, but and I've talked about these movies a lot now. But the scene where she kills the Nazgul and she says, "I am no man," and then she like thrusts her sword into his helmet.
uh-huh.
In my head, every time I see that scene, I go, "Girl power!" from, from the Spice Girls, you know.
Uh-huh.
It my head like every time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pretty much what I thought when I saw it as well. Because, of course, Eowyn is a very unlikely character in a typically medieval fantasy world, right?
Mhm,
Uh, Traditionally, women are portrayed as the ones to be saved, not the saviors.
mm,
And what she did here is very, very important. And no one, and she shared with Mary, the fact that they underestimated her skills because of her gender. And
mm.
I I I I just love the scene where she grabs Mary and she says, we're going to do this, and we're going to have courage. And she's just scared to death herself, but she still does it.
Mm.
And I don't know, I love her so much. And the
There's
moment,
there's sorry, I'm
oh,
interrupting you.
I mean,
The-
the moment that she thrust the sword into the Nazgul's head, and you say that you screamed in your mind, "Girl power!" That was pretty much what went into my head, exactly, because it was like so refreshing for me at that time to see a character like this.
mm,
And well, I I was not unfamiliar to this type of characters because when I was a teenager and in my earlier, I mean, in my teenage years, in my early teenage years, I watched a lot of anime, and there are a
Mm.
lot of strong female characters like her in this type of genre. But to see that in a mainstream movie, it was pretty awesome. And when I read it, I also almost cried. But yeah, it's a powerful moment for a young girl to watch.
Yeah, I was going to say two things about Miranda Rotto as Eowyn. Well, about Eowyn more generally. First of all, is in the books she actually dresses as a man in order to kind of subvert her uncle's order not to go with them, and so she dresses as a man, takes on another name, and so she's in disguise. So
Hmm.
the fact that she actually disguises herself as a man, and the whole thing builds up to her fighting in the battle, that kind of the feminist kind of narrative there is even more pronounced in the books in a way.
Hmm.
Um, uh,
And
yeah, you could cross examine that further. You could have a whole long conversation about that in and of
yes,
itself. But it's interesting that Tolkien would pick that kind of story to tell in a story that's so male dominated that he would choose to include that.
and in the
Um,
era that it was written as well.
yeah. Um, and what else was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, the other interesting thing you were talking about Mary and Eowyn, um, together in that.
Hmm.
There's something else that I see quite a lot on Tolkien Twitter is Tolkien artists drawing those two together in a romantic setting. A lot of people ship them in the
Mm.
Tolkien fandom, which I actually really love that. Just because, from a movie-centric point of view, I
Uh-huh.
don't. Faramir's character is not as strong as he could be compared with the
Hmm.
book version. And so the fact that they end up together in the movie doesn't necessarily work as well as it does in the book.
Hmm.
Um, and so the fact that people ship the Mary character from the movies with Eowyn, I really like that because I can kind of see that. Um,
Yeah, I mean it's adorable, but at the same time, I like the fact that they can develop a friendship without the element of being attracted to each other. And that's something that I also appreciate a lot because for so long women have suffered from uh, having friends that don't really want to be friends with you. And the moment that you reveal that you actually want to keep the friendship, sometimes you get rejection and you get backlash from the man. And to
mm,
see a friendship between a man and a woman without attractions, without sexual attraction, is also something very positive to see.
yeah,
And Amy
sure.
is pointing out something about the what
Hmm.
you said earlier about Eowyn dressing up as a man. It is classic. It is a classic feminism as doing man things, though. Certainly groundbreaking for the time, though. Yes,
Yeah,
it
I
was
agree. That's what
groundbreaking for
that's
the.
that's why I said that you could have a whole podcast about that and cross-examine it. That's why I said that
Yes,
because
and
yeah,
and
absolutely, there are problems with that as well.
yes, and it actually ties up with the what I said earlier with about Arwen that there are many ways to be
Yeah.
a strong female character without wielding a sword or being a warrior. And it's just many times it's just about making strong decisions that will end in a positive outcome for everyone else. And like you said, she's the one that pretty much convinces Elrond to actually step up
Mm.
and do something. And without that, Helm's Deep battle was going to be a you know a tragedy.
Yeah, it very nearly was anyway.
Uh-huh.
Gandalf
Uh-huh.
might have turned up and the castle was just full of orcs and everyone was dead.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh yeah, Kate. Yes, the friend zone. What I was saying earlier about Mary
mm,
and Eowyn, and also a very tender moment that I like about the extended versions is Faramir and Eowyn's interaction, because in the commercial version of the movies, you don't really see them together. Never, you never see them together until Aragorn's coronation, and you're like, if you are not familiar with the story, you're like, why are they together? But with
Mm.
those tiny little scenes with when you see them interact in the standard versions are very lovely. I like them and I love them both so much for all what they have been through and all that they have lived in this world, and to see them together was like was like a band-aid to my heart. I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about Faramir? Not necessarily Faramir and Eowyn, but Faramir in general. I think that's
Faramir
a
in
lovely
general,
character as well.
yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about him. I'm seeing John is talking about he finds Faramir more interesting in the films. Uh, yeah, it's Faramir. I think Faramir kind of suffers from a sort of butterfly effect with all the characters around him. Like things have to change plot wise in order to get Sam and Frodo towards Gilead to give them something to do while the Battle of Helm's Deep is going on. Even though we don't get that many shots of Osgiliath, the whole second half of that movie is mostly Helm's Deep stuff. But um, Faramir, I don't know. I don't know. I see it both ways because I go back and forth on this question of Faramir. I kind of like the change that they made to make him tempted by the ring in a way,
Hmm.
because it does sort of seem out of place a bit, or it could seem out of place a bit in the movie at least, for him to
Hmm.
just book version. For those who don't know, book Faramir, when he learns that Frodo has the One Ring and that he's on some kind of quest and that he's the ring bearer. When he learns that in the book, he immediately says, "But I don't want it. So I would never dream of taking that. I know what it would do to me, and I'm too wise for this." And he's just this very kind of he's very Aragorn like in his
Hmm.
approach to the whole thing. He's pure as the driven snow and won't be tempted by it. And I could see how that could possibly not work in a film. Um,
Yeah. I mean, in order to make a character more interesting, you need to add layers, right?
hmm.
And
It's the Denethor stuff that doesn't work with Faramir. That's what doesn't work for me. Anyway, carry on.
well, I disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Um, Denethor is such a despicable character that you immediately hate him, no matter what he says, no matter what he does. Uh, but that the way he treats Faramir
Mm.
is something that is it does happen in real life, and the conflict that Faramir has and why he is tempted with the ring is based on that. Is based on that conflict, and
Yeah.
that's why for me it works because you see his motivation, and his motivation is just to be liked by his dad.
Well, it works in
And
the extended version. It doesn't
in the
work so well
standard
in the
version, yes.
theatrical. Yeah.
um and well, he has such a great nature, and I don't know. For some reason, it's not like my parents were like that with me, but I relate with him in many
They
other
they didn't they
aspects.
didn't try to set you on fire then.
No, no, I mean, no, that's not my case at all. But, but the fact that, but the fact that I grew up very distantly from my siblings because they are much older than me, it made me feel like the I was always seen as the kid and not and no one actually took me seriously. So I was able to relate in that part. Not big I wasn't at all pushed down or anything like that, but um I don't know. I relate to him in some way that I can really explain.
I can understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I have a lot of empathy for him. And that's why the conflict with his dad actually works for me, and I can see why he was tempted. I can see why he was so desperate to be liked. And yeah, I don't know. And when he ended up with Elwyn, to finally feel loved by someone who is also as damaged as he is for
Mm.
different reasons. Yeah, it's like healing in, it's like I said, like a band-aid in my heart. I don't know.
Yeah,
um
just don't eat her stew, whatever you do.
mhm. Yeah. Okay. So another another thing that I liked was when we're going back and forth from the one movie to another, of course,
It's
but
inevitable. They're all
like
one long 10-hour movie, Cece. Didn't you know that?
no, I mean I don't I was planning to go
Once you start
movie by
watching the
movie.
first one, it's the law that you have to sit there and watch all of them.
Yes, you can just separate them. I mean, I was planning to actually there's this my post-it note when I was going with the structure of this show, of this episode, and I plan to talk about each separate film,
Mhm.
but it's just impossible to do that. I mean, there are so many things that are related in that are connected that you just can't, you just can't do that. I mean, and of course, we can't talk about the Lord of the Rings without talking about the battles.
Mhm.
Helm's Deep is so spectacular cinematically that
Mhm.
it was a precedent for all the movie scenes that happened after that, both in TV and movies. So
Yeah.
I don't know, it was so spectacular. And when I
Yeah,
watched,
the build up of tension, I think, is what
yes,
makes it work so well. It's quite a short chapter in the book,
uh-huh,
and they spent a long time on it in the movie, but you can certainly see why, and you're glad that they did. And yeah,
hmm
it's just so much tension builds up before the Uruk-hai attack,
hmm
and then there's so many great moments as well. The explosion, and the moment when Aragorn and Gimli sort of dive in front of the door, and you
oh
know,
yeah.
buy them some time to barricade the door, and the humor, and just so many things that work so well.
Yeah, and in that, actually, two of my favorite things in during the whole battle thing were Gimli and Legolas,
Mm.
because of this. I mean, they were like the icebreaker there. I mean, they were like the fun moments of the battle that maybe, I mean, I'm not a soldier, I've never been in war or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure that even in the most horrible situation, you can find humor, some humor there.
Hmm.
And it was lovely to see that. It was lovely to see them count their their deaths. And the moment when Gimli tells Aragorn to toss him,
Yeah.
it's also pretty funny considering the nature of dwarves and their pride.
Mm.
They don't want to be they don't want to feel like less than men or than elves, and they are constantly trying to keep up with them. So I found it very funny when he said toss me.
Yeah, I also like Aragorn's reaction as well,
Yeah.
because Gimli says, "I cannot dump that distance. You'll have to toss me." And then he's about to do it, and then he says, "Don't tell the elf."
Yeah. Not a word.
And Aragorn's like, "Oh, not a word." Yeah, he totally gets it. Rolls with it.
Uh-huh. Yeah, we already talked about what John is mentioning here. That he says, "I'm glad they found another way to tell her story, but I still want to see those Arwen Helm's Deep scenes." We
Mhm.
already discussed this, and yes, I would have loved to see that as well. I would have loved to see Arwen fight a um, a female elf fight in the move and the main trilogy. But at the same time, I appreciate that they didn't do it because of the reasons that I already said, that they are, I repeat it, there are many ways to see strong female characters. But I agree with you. I felt robbed from those scenes because I don't know. I like Arwen so much,
Mm.
and I don't know. It's always great to see your favorite characters do something amazing, right?
We did get Toriel in the Hobbit movies. Opinions vary on
Yeah,
her quite a lot, but we did get to see
yeah,
a
but
lady, a lady
it's
elf
not
doing
the
cool ninja
same.
stuff. No.
I mean, I don't want to diminish Toriel, but she's a made up character, and so that robs a little bit of her magic for I don't know, but it's not the same. I don't know, it's not the same, but at the same time, I like Toriel, and I like what they did with her. I don't know.
That's another conversation for another
Yes,
day,
yes,
possibly.
that's
But
for another. I mean, the Lord of the Rings can give you so much material to create content. I mean, that your channel is all about it, and that's one of the greatest things about this saga. I mean, as a whole, no matter if it's on the books or on the screen. And oh yes, I saw this. You can actually see Arwen behind Eomer at the end of the battle. And there's another scene that is from an upper point of view, like going like
yeah,
um,
that's the one I'm
yeah,
familiar with. Yeah.
yeah, and you can see her in. She's kind of wearing some sort of reddish kind of robes or something, and you see her there. But if you're not familiar with this, that they have scenes with Arwen in Helm's Deep, you just totally miss it. And what else? And the battle in Gondor is also very spectacular,
Hmm.
and mainly because of the sense of doom that you have at the beginning of it. You know that this is an impossible task to make. You know that they are just completely screwed up, and things
You feel
keep
like
happening.
Denethor does in a way, don't you? You feel like there's no hope, and
Yeah. So that's why he says, like, you know what, just
mm,
go away, and I don't care anymore. And I love when Gandalf hits him with the uh,
yeah,
what's yeah
stuff. Yeah.
yeah with the staff, yes, with his staff, and he's like, you're shut up, you idiot. And he steps into command. I love that moment. I love that moment, and of course I love the when I saw the bravery of Pippin finally showing up and stepping up to do the right thing. And I feel that one of the main reasons why he changed, or what changed Pippin, was seeing how Denethor treated Faramir.
Yeah.
I think I believe that that broke his heart in a deep way, and that's why he it moved him, and it changed his persona. I don't know why he felt his pain, and that's
Yeah,
why he.
there is a bit of camaraderie between those two.
Uh-huh.
There's a nice scene where Pippin's talking about his armor that he's been given, his little kind of uniform that he's been given, and Faramir kind of hints that it used to be his, and they had that nice bonding moment. And
Mhm.
yeah, definitely like that character dynamic, which doesn't get talked about enough actually. Those
Yeah,
two.
and very much. I think that another key moment for Pippin is when he is asked to sing the song, and well, he doesn't, like, he says to Denethor, I don't really know
Mm.
many great songs, rather than just the ones
Yeah.
that are sung in the Shire, and but he
Yeah,
somehow.
we don't have many like songs for great halls or evil times, but let me just give you this amazing solo that it's just this
Yeah.
is incredibly moving, solo that with beautiful voice, and it's like okay,
Yes,
you
and
practiced that a few times in the mirror, didn't you? Though.
but the magical thing about it is that I think that his sadness for the whole situation and what he saw with Faramir makes him or motivates him to find the saddest song he could have thought of from the Shire.
Yeah.
and and he sings this song when Faramir is going into this doom mission that Denethor gave him.
Trigger
Uh,
warning, we're about to mention tomatoes.
yeah. Yeah. I think, you know what? This summer I was growing cherry tomatoes here when I had a plant that did grew like crazy big and it gave me so many tomatoes. And I think Denethor would have been trying to steal it away from me. So, oh, John says, "Am I the only one who feels that Billy Boyd stole the show in The Return of the King?" In a way, he did, because you didn't give a crap about this character for the first two movies. I mean, not that you didn't give anything for him or you didn't feel anything for him, but he was certainly not the most emotionally triggering character for you. I mean, rather than just a few laughs that he could give you and a few like, oh my god, oh, not again, peeping kind of moments. But I think this is the moment when you uh I don't know, where you actually change your mind about him as well. You
I think
mentioned
what
earlier you mentioned earlier that Pippin was one of your favorite characters. Why is that?
I think because of what we've been talking about, because of how much it
Uh-huh.
grows, and especially in
Yes.
this last film. And yeah, I don't think that's wrong at all. What John just said, that he steals the show. I think it's hard to steal a show with this good of a cast,
Mhm.
um, but it's what really changes him. I think is it or forces him to grow up. Really, is that he's separated from Mary when
Mhm.
there's that really good scene where they're separated and Mary's like watching them ride off with Aragorn
Mhm.
um, and it's you can see that Mary fears for him and that they've never been apart, that they've
Mhm.
been together their whole lives, joined at the hip,
Yeah.
um, and then when you catch up with Pippin again, you see it from his point of view, and he's immediately like a different Hobbit at that point. Um, I really enjoy him as a character, and Mary too.
Mhm. There's someone that we haven't talked about. Someone very important.
Oh,
Smeagol.
Smeagol, that's true. Yeah.
Smeagol. Oh, I have many things to say about him, and well, I mean, he's the portrayal of the damage that the ring can cause you, right?
Hmm.
But I think there is a little bit more to that because uh what I feel is that scene where we are presented with Smeagol when he was still a hobbit, he I don't know, he had something about him that made me think that he wasn't like the best person ever.
He does
Even
go straight to murder like pretty quickly, doesn't he?
yes,
It-
yes, and that is something that for some reason, and it makes me feel like I don't know the words for this. I mean, I'm a little frustrated by the language barrier here, but doesn't. It's not. It doesn't match with the description of the hobbits in the Shire.
mm,
That the what we have seen in Frodo and Sam in Merry and Pippin, that they are more resistant to evil. That they are more. I don't
no,
know.
that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is this is not like I don't know. There's something there that doesn't quite fit, but it's precisely the reason why he fell so hard for the power of the ring. And
Yeah, I think it matters a lot under what circumstances you take the ring, under
mm-hmm,
what circumstances you take possession of it,
mm-hmm,
and the fact that he murdered his best friend in order to steal it from him,
mm-hmm,
because in his words, I want it. um,
Hmm.
it, yeah, it's because he does that. I feel like he's doomed himself from the start because he's
Yeah,
taken the ring under those circumstances, and
and violence
uh,
circumstances. Yes. Hmm.
yeah, and so the ring just eats away at him that much quicker than it would anybody else.
Hmm.
Um, That's not to say I don't think he was a murderer before that. I think he was
No,
probably, just a bit of a creep before that, probably. But maybe. I mean, at
probably.
least that's what's implied in the book version. Gandalf tells us in the book version that Smeagol was, always like digging up graves and stuff like this.
Hmm.
So he sounds like a creepy dude in the books. But yeah,
Yeah.
we should talk a little bit about the kind of character that we meet later on, though the Gollum that we meet later on.
Yes.
Perhaps move on. Gollum uh, has this kind of multiple personality thing that he has, and this obviously the famous scene where he has an argument with himself and
Yeah.
manages to convince his other self to go away for a while, which I really like that scene. And
And what I find interesting about Gollum, the whole Gollum Smeagol thing is that well, the phenomenon about multiple personality disorder is something quite real, and it's something that is born out of trauma.
mhm.
Uh, it, After a big trauma that you experience, many people tend to this the I don't know the word in English.
Dissociate.
Yes, yes, that was the word that I was looking for. Thank you. And they start developing these other personalities, and they start to, having this internal dialogue between these made up personalities. And I like the way they portrayed it on a fantasy character in a very unlikely setting for that type of topic. And I don't know, as I find it so interesting because, like I said, this is born out of trauma, and the character that has experienced trauma the most is precisely him.
Mm,
And the fact that he murdered his best friend, the fact that he lost this precious little object that gave
yeah.
meaning to his life, even if it was a bad meaning to his life. And
Well,
suddenly,
it was an all consuming obsession for him that it
mhm,
went on for hundreds of years. So it
yes,
poisoned his mind, is the way that Gandalf puts it, and I think that's exactly right.
uh-huh,
He's a fascinating character.
yes, and you can see that he's not entirely, well, of course we know the ending, but
Mm,
you can see that he's not entirely lost into the evil of the ring, because he, like you said, he ends up uh asking the evil side of him to go away,
mm.
and it does for a while, but eventually trauma cuts
It's all
cuts up.
Faramir's
Yes,
fault.
yes. It's all Faramir's fault, but yes, and it makes him, he's so traumatized that he has trust issues, very very deep trust issues. So
Mm,
yeah, this is why he behaves the way he behaves. And I would love to discuss this type of topics with someone that is a psychologist or a therapist or something, because you can get a lot of information from there, and it makes the characters much more interesting if you analyze them in that way. I'm not a psychologist, but I always liked the psychology of every character when I go into a story. I always like to think about them, about the motivations that they have. And
mm.
yeah, it's very enjoyable. What do you have to say about him?
I was wondering whether you think Gollum wants to be redeemed, whether because he certainly seems to be trying, doesn't he? At some stage, he seems to be, when he tells his other self to go away, he seems to be trying to get rid of that
Mhm.
that demon
Yeah,
on his shoulder. He seems to be trying to exercise that demon and get rid of it. And
yeah.
in the end, he just can't because his trust issues are just. he feels like he's been betrayed by Frodo, doesn't he? I suppose. Um,
Yes, I do believe that there's some desire for, I don't know if I would call it redemption, but
mm,
I would call it release,
mm.
a release from this suffering. And this is why his good nature shows up. Eventually it gets, eaten by the evil self, but
Yeah, well,
uh
the thing is the evil personality convinces the good personality to do evil. That's
mhm,
that's why he's not redeemed in the end, and why he's an
yeah.
evil character.
Mhm.
But it's still sad.
It is very sad. It's one of the saddest characters in the whole trilogy and in the whole saga. I mean, yes, there are many sad characters in the Silmarillion or any other of Tolkien's writings, but
Mm,
he is definitely the most tragic one because of what the ring did to him. And there are and you can see this in so many people that that have suffered so much, not not necessarily that they become evil, but they just lost themselves, and there is just no way to save them because they are so deep into their own hell,
mm.
self-made hate, or maybe the circumstance made hell, that it's almost impossible to save them. And I don't know, it's
Speaking of villains, somebody else we haven't talked about yet is Saruman.
yes,
We should probably talk about him a little bit, maybe.
yes, because we are getting near
Yeah,
to the end of the
it's
show.
very difficult to cover a 10-hour movie epic in
Yes,
an hour and a half, isn't
yes, it's so hard.
it?
It is so hard. But yes, Saruman is another tragic character because, well, he's one of the Easter, right?
Mm,
He's one of the most. He's actually the boss of the Easter,
mhm. The head of the
and
council.
yes, the head of the council, and he's powerful, and his motivations for. I read something very interesting recently about his uh, why he succumbed to Sauron's power,
Mm,
and is that he became so frustrated to see men and elves and dwarves fighting with each other and never being able to agree on something and change things for a positive outcome, that he actually forced things to change in the way that he thought they were good. And Sauron took advantage of this, and it became something quite negative, right? Uh-huh.
yes, very much so.
Hmm.
It's a slippery slope with him, isn't it? He probably starts off with an ends justify the means kind of argument that he makes to himself, but
Hmm.
then he just takes that way too far. And I think Tolkien certainly would say that once you start going down that road of the ends justifying the means, it's always a losing argument, and you're always going to lose yourself. Um, that
Hmm.
he compromises too quickly. Um,
And I think that the movies don't really explore that. They just
Not
present an
necessarily.
evil. Yes, they straightforwardly present an evil Saruman, and you don't really understand why he fell into that if you don't actually if you're not actually familiar with the literature material. And
Yeah,
I
it's there a little bit. Um, he says to Gandalf, "It would be wise, Gandalf,"
uh
um, but it's
it's more a survival type of
mm,
thing. Why the way they portray it in the movies,
mm.
he's just
and
making a
he
move
he
of
doesn't
survival.
he doesn't talk about working against Sauron. Like he
Hmm.
talk in the book, he talks about using the ring to defeat Sauron,
Hmm.
to claim it for themselves, and that he talks about what I talked about earlier, which is that the Dominion of Men is coming, and that at the time of the elves is over, and that when that happens, the wizards should be in charge. The wizards should
Hmm.
rule the world of men,
Hmm.
um, which is an argument that you can kind of understand, even though if it doesn't add up, it's not right. It's clearly
Hmm.
it's clearly a self-serving argument, and it's
Yes, disguised as a good intention, right?
mm,
And like that famous saying says that the road to hell is paved with positive or good intentions,
right.
and this is true because and you see this in Saruman,
Mm,
and you see this in Boromir, and you see this in all these complex characters that are more susceptible to the power of the ring. Um, but that is precisely what Sauron takes advantage, and that's why it makes him a powerful villain, because he knows to detect how to detect the weaknesses of people and take advantage of that. And that's what makes it makes me more excited about the portrayal of Sauron in the series.
yeah, we'll get to see him manipulate people,
Hmm.
up close and personal, which would be interesting. Yeah,
Yes,
definitely.
yes,
Um,
that's why I think this character should be very charismatic and
definitely.
good looking as well. I expect to see someone very good looking and very charismatic, because
Yeah, you're
otherwise,
not the only one.
yeah, but not because I want to see someone good looking in camera, but it's because I want to see someone that actually convinces me that this person is so persuasive that he can do whatever he wants with anyone.
You need to have somebody with the charisma and gravitas to be able to pull that kind of um, almost supernatural level of persuasiveness. I think.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
it's why I like Christopher. Going back to the films, it's why I really like Christopher Lee as
Mhm.
Saruman. Is that it was one thing that's really made a lot of in the books is his voice, the power of his voice being an important power for him. We see a little bit of his persuasiveness when he persuades the wild men, the Dunlendings, to fight for him. I think that's
Mhm.
maybe just an extended scene, but I'm not sure. Um, but because obviously Christopher Lee has this amazing, deep, sonorous sort of voice that it just is just beautiful, kind of velvety sort of voice that's just it's just perfect.
Yeah.
It really works so well. I can't imagine anybody else playing that role, and I don't think I want to see anybody else playing that character ever.
No, and
Um,
it's the kind of power that you expect from a wizard, right? I
mhm,
mean, Sir Ian McKellen also has this deep, powerful voice,
mhm,
but you can truly see who of them is more powerful just by listening to their voices, to the depth and the pitch of their voices. So
mhm.
I really like that about acting. I mean, I'm not an actor or anything, but I appreciate this type of details very much when you see a character on screen. Um,
I'm guessing you know this, but there's a story about Christopher Lee. Well, he met Tolkien, of course,
yeah.
and the only one of the cast that have ever met Tolkien.
Uh-huh.
Um, but he wanted to play Gandalf, and so
Okay.
he told Ian McKellen at one point that he thought that he should have been cast in the role of Gandalf. um, so
Uh-huh.
it's but I can't imagine anybody else as Saruman.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, it's just that the character precisely of the voice. Maybe that's why he was more fit to the Saruman role rather than Gandalf, because his voice and the way he portrays Saruman, you truly believe that this is an evil person, and
mm.
just by listening to the voice, because it's terrifying when he. I don't know.
Yeah,
He's
no question.
terrifying.
He's there's a reason why he's played Dracula and you know
Hmm.
and a Dark Lord of the Sith as well, and that's why he gets those kind of roles.
Uh-huh.
uh,
Yeah, I mean, there's people that are born to play villains. I
yeah.
don't know. Maybe they are the most adorable people in real
I,
life,
I'm
but
fairly confident he was as well, actually.
yeah, yeah, but some maybe it's just the face, or maybe it's the voice, or maybe it's the way that they stand and the way they move. I don't know. That's why many people get stereotyped in that type of casting. But before we go, we
We've got
didn't.
5 minutes left, and we've got so much that we've left out.
Oh yes, yes, yes. It's terrible, but maybe we will. make a second part of this. I don't know, maybe in the future.
Potentially.
Yes, but I would love to briefly mention Legolas. Uh,
Mhm. That means we won't have time to talk about Theoden,
uh-huh. Yes,
which is epically tragic because he's amazing.
yes, yes. I think we should talk about Theon rather than
Should we
Legolas
do
because,
a should we do a Theoden stream another time? Should we just do a whole?
yeah, yeah. I mean, briefly, Legolas. Okay,
Go
Legolas is it's a character that is pretty much designed to for you to understand why the elves are so cool,
on.
and that's pretty much his mission in the whole story. uh, because it's not you don't really get much from him. In the books, you get a lot of context and a lot of history from him, and that's pretty much the reason that the his mission in the book as story wise is just explaining other characters the meanings and the context of the conflict that they're living and they're going through.
Mm.
And he's just pretty much like like the elven's encyclopedia that has seen much more than them and makes them understand why the seriousness of their task. And in the movies you don't really get that often. You do get some explanations from him, but it's more like this is the character that makes you understand why elves are so cool.
Yeah, he's mostly there doing cool stuff. He's doing ninja moves. He's killing
Yeah,
giant elephants and skateboarding down a flight of stairs and doing all kinds of acrobatic ninja stuff.
yeah.
Um,
and
for the most
of
part,
course
and
and of
having
course
and having funny banter with Gimli while he's doing it.
yes, yes, it's like the ointment to the I don't know, to the wound that separated elves from dwarves, right?
Mm. Mm.
And their friendship is pretty cool as well.
It is, yeah.
Yes, and the reason, well, I don't remember this, but correct me if I am wrong. But in the end of all their adventures, does Gimli travel with Legolas to? Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wasn't wrong.
so
Valinor.
I think it's shortly after Helm's Deep they agree to they agree to go traveling together.
Uh
So
huh.
they agree to visit the caves of Aglarond, I think they're called,
Hmm.
which are underneath Helm's Deep. Which in the book Gimli gets stuck down there. He kind of he gets kind of cornered down there, and that's how he ends up passing Legolas's kill count. Um, and so when he after the battle he talks about that and he says that they're really really beautiful and he is really poetic about it all. And Legolas says to him, "I've never heard you talk like this before."
Hmm.
And so then they agree to see that together, as well as the forest of Fangorn.
Hmm.
So Gimli agrees to go with Legolas and visit the forest of Fangorn.
Hmm.
So they go traveling together for a while, and then they live, together in Middle Earth for well, not together, but they end up, spending the next several decades in Middle Earth, and then they sail to Valinor together at the end.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't sure about that, but I did remember that little detail. And
But
Erin also,
Gimli,
of
the
course.
only dwarf ever to sail to Valinor.
That's kind of interesting in another type of ways, but that's material for for another episode. But I would like to point out what Erin says here, that Legolas also his function was also pointing out the obvious, like, oh, a diversion. Yes, thanks, Legolas. And also they're taking the hobbits to Isengard type of things.
Yeah,
Or what John says here, a red sun rises, blood has been spilled this night. Yeah, I
I
mean,
end up using that quote like at least once a week, I think. If I get up early enough for it, anyway.
every month for every girl.
Oh damn!
I'm sorry. I mean, yeah, I mean, blood is spilled every month. Okay, I'm sorry for that reference. I'm sorry. But yeah, I hope it made you laugh. Uh, I hope I mean. Okay, I need to calm down. Okay. Well, any final thoughts about this whole thing? Maybe we really should do another episode about the whole world of Tolkien, but we'll see that. We'll see that. We'll
I'm
schedule that.
down. Yeah.
But yeah, final thoughts.
Yeah, just thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat to you, and I enjoyed talking about these movies anytime as well. So yeah, just enjoyed this whole conversation, and it's good to get more of your thoughts as well. You know, because we've been on panels together, and we've talked before about these movies, but when you share the kind of space with a whole bunch of other people, it's sometimes difficult to get all of your thoughts in. And give other people a chance to talk too, you know. So it's
Hmm.
good, a really good conversation. Um, and yeah, we'll talk more in the future, hopefully. So thank you for having me on.
No, thank you for being here. I something got up in my throat. I don't know if you want to talk about some of your content or upcoming things that are in your channel.
Yeah, certainly. So yeah, my channel is Voice of Geekdom, as you guys can see on the screen there.
Yeah,
Um,
here it is.
and
The link.
Cool.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that's where you can find me on YouTube. I do Lord of the Rings content, mostly focused on the books for the time being. I'll be covering the new TV show in great depth, of course, when it comes out. And I stream every other week. So I do live streams on Mondays. Not this week, but next week I'll be back. So that'll be Valentine's Day.
Hmm.
I'll have a live stream about a topic to be determined. Possibly the new teaser trailer for The Rings of Power, potentially, if it does come
Hopefully.
out. If it does come out for
In,
the Super Bowl.
yeah.
Um, and I also produce a lot of Silmarillion content. So I do a lot of first age content talking about the Silmarillion, especially the Quenta Silmarillion, which deals with the first age. So yeah, I have a long running series on the channel where I kind of break down the Silmarillion chapter by chapter, or split chapters into multiple parts at times, and it's really fun series where I have voiced parts of dialogue as well, so there's an element of dramatization to it, and go into quite a lot of depth about some of the stories and try to explain them for first time readers, but also bring something interesting and analytical to the table. So it's a fun series that the channel's kind of known for, and a lot of people are waiting on the next episode all the time. But yeah, I do all sorts of other things as well, but mostly Tolkien stuff.
Oh, and then congratulations on hitting the 5K
Oh, thank
mark
you very
of
much. Yeah.
subscribers. That's a pretty big accomplishment. It's not easy. It's not easy to grow your audience.
No, it's not.
So it speaks that your content is high quality and it's very helpful for people who want to go deep in, or simply try to understand. The Silmarillion is not easy to read,
It's not.
and having this type of content helps a lot. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for being here. It was pretty amazing. I was looking forward to this for a long time, and well, thank you so much, and I hope we can share the screen in the future.
Oh, my pleasure.
Either.
Yeah, I'll certainly. Yeah, we'll do more in the future. As I say, I'll be covering the Rings of Power show on my channel, so I expect
Mhm.
I'll probably be asking people that I know that like Tolkien, who aren't Tolkien YouTubers who are doing their own content, to come on. So I'll definitely have you on the list at some point in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, and we really need to do another episode about for all the things that we didn't weren't able to cover here.
Just a
It's
whole
a
Theoden stream. That's what we need.
yes, just an episode to talk about Theod and the Rohirrim. I love the Rohirrim. They're probably my favorite people on Middle Earth. Uh, for many reasons. We will dive into that in the next episode, whenever that is. But yeah, thank you all for showing up. Thank you all for sharing with us in the comments. They're always something very thrilling to see when we are live streaming. And well, you can follow. You can also follow Dan on social and
It's my
with
my Twitter and
yes with
on
Twitter.
Instagram and Facebook as well.
Yeah, with Twitter, Voice of Geek, and Voice of Geekdom in on Instagram.
Hmm.
And well, you
Voice of
can.
Geekdom was already taken on Twitter by some kind of
Oh,
bot that was selling sunglasses. So
that sucks.
yeah, it does.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. Well, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for subscribing and hitting the little bell button so you are aware of the new content. I would like to tell you that the other episode about talking about the Lord of the Rings will be the first to be translated, will be the first to be subtitled. I will keep you updated with that whenever it is ready. It is actually right now being translated as we speak, but once it is ready, I will let you know. So please be sure to follow me on social as at Geeksterilia, and you will find the links in the description of my channel. And also, thank you so much if you are willing to become a Patreon and contribute to making the dream possible, that making this content available for both Spanish and English speaking people. And well, thank you so much. Thank you for watching. This audio, you will find it during the weekend in your favorite podcast platform. And well, thank you all for watching, and may the force be with you. Bye. Oh, something is going on here.